I stood in our living room, the polyester fabric of my graduation gown irritating my skin in the oppressive June heat. The ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, stirring the warm air but offering little comfort. Across from me, Emma adjusted her graduation cap, our tassels swinging together in synchronized motion, identical in appearance yet worlds apart in significance. "Girls, look this way!" Mom's voice rang out with practiced enthusiasm as she positioned her camera. But her eyes lingered on Emma for a beat longer, that familiar warmth reserved exclusively for my sister. The living room had been transformed into a shrine of academic accomplishment. Cream and gold streamers hung from the ceiling, and a large "Congratulations Graduates" banner stretched impressively across the fireplace mantel. Yet I couldn't help but notice how the decorations clustered more densely on Emma's side, as if gravity itself favored her. Dad placed his hand proudly on Emma's shoulder, squeezing gently. "My girls," he proclaimed, though his palm didn't reach for me. I stood slightly apart, just as I had for most of my life, connected by blood and circumstance yet separated by everything else. Our relatives and family friends milled around, filling their plates with catered food and offering congratulations. Aunt Caroline caught my eye from across the room and gave me a genuine smile. At least someone saw me. "All right, everyone," Dad clapped his hands, drawing attention. "Time for the gifts." Chatter subsided instantly as he wheeled in a large box, wrapped in gleaming silver paper with an enormous red bow. Despite myself, my heart quickened. After years of disappointment, I still harbored that childish hope. Maybe today would be different. Perhaps graduation day would finally be the equalizer. "This one's for Emma," Dad announced, beaming as he placed the massive package in front of my sister. Emma's hands flew to her mouth in a theatrical gasp that felt rehearsed. She tore at the paper with practiced excitement, revealing a smaller box inside. As she opened it, she let out a squeal that made my ears ring. "Car keys!" Emma jumped up and down in excitement. "You didn't." "We did," Mom confirmed, glowing with satisfaction. "It's parked right outside." Collectively, the guests moved toward the large bay window. Outside sat a gleaming white Mercedes-Benz, a massive red bow perfectly placed on its polished hood. "The class," Dad explained to our uncle loud enough for everyone to hear, "ran us about $55,000, but nothing's too good for our star." Impressed murmurs rippled through the crowd as I stood frozen, still waiting, still hoping. "And for Isabel," Dad said, almost as an afterthought, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a simple white envelope. The room quieted as he handed it to me. It was light, far too light for car keys, far too light for anything substantial. Still, I accepted it with steady hands, carefully opening the seal while every eye in the room watched. Inside, there wasn't a congratulatory card, nor a check, not even a gift certificate. Instead, it was a bill, itemized meticulously in my father's precise handwriting. 4 years of car insurance, $8,400. Contribution to household utilities, $7,200. Computer equipment, $5,500. Miscellaneous family expenses, $8,900. Total, $30,000. "We thought you'd appreciate this approach, Isabel," Mom said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "You've always been so practical." The room spun slightly as I stared at the numbers, each figure a painful confirmation of something I'd always known but never fully believed. My trembling fingers betrayed me, though I fought to keep my face composed. A memory flashed. Christmas morning, age 10, Emma gleefully unwrapping the latest gaming console while I received sensible clothes for school. My parents calmly explained that some children needed extras to thrive while others were naturally self-sufficient. Another flash, 15 years old, teaching myself coding from library books in my bedroom, the sounds of my parents driving away to attend Emma's debate tournament echoing in my ears. Then, at 17, my first freelance job completed at 2 a.m., the payment confirmation brought tears of pride to my eyes, pride that no one else would ever share. "Family responsibility," Dad was now explaining, his voice carrying rehearsed conviction. "We've supported you both equally, just differently. Emma needs different things to succeed in life." Emma, already texting friends about her new car, glanced up briefly with a dismissive shrug. "You always say money doesn't matter to you, Izzy." From across the room, Aunt Caroline's eyes met mine once more. Her concerned glance was the only acknowledgement that something terribly wrong had just occurred. I felt it, a flash of white-hot hurt burning through my chest. Quickly, I masked it with a composure I'd perfected over years of similar moments. But something had shifted. Something within me had finally broken. Carefully, I refolded the bill and returned it to its envelope. "Thank you for this," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's a real eye-opener." No one seemed to grasp the weight of my words. Party resumed around me as guests drifted outside to admire Emma's Mercedes. Standing alone in the center of the living room, I felt invisible, as always. Quietly, I slipped upstairs to my bedroom while congratulatory exclamations floated up from the driveway. Inside, I closed the door softly and pulled my pre-packed suitcase from beneath the bed. I'd prepared it last week, a precaution, a suspicion, an escape route I desperately hoped I wouldn't need. As I placed the last few items inside, I heard Emma revving the engine of her new car, the sound of freedom given freely to her, while I was expected to pay for the mere privilege of existing in this house. Today was supposed to be our day, but then again it never truly was ours. I zipped the suitcase closed. Contained everything I genuinely needed. What I needed most right now was to leave. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin blinds of my new apartment. The space was small but mine, truly mine. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I traced my fingertips along the worn cotton of unfamiliar sheets. My phone buzzed for the 4th time this morning. Sophia, that's how I thought of her now, not Mom. Names created distance, and distance was exactly what I needed. I let the phone ring until silence filled the room once more. 11 missed calls, I murmured, scrolling through notifications, 3 from Sophia, 4 from Jonathan, and 4 from Emma. Timestamps showed escalating concern, or perhaps merely inconvenience. The initial calls began around 9 last night, casual in their spacing. By midnight, they arrived every 20 minutes. By this morning, panic had clearly set in. I imagined the scene at home, Sophia discovering my empty bedroom, the closet cleared of essentials, dresser drawers half empty. Jonathan dismissing it with a wave of his hand. "She's just being dramatic, she'll be back." Emma probably claimed my bedroom before noon, the larger space and better view a prize she'd coveted since childhood. I pictured her hauling armfuls of designer clothes across the hallway even before my sheets had fully cooled. My phone buzzed again with a text message from Sophia. "Isabel, this tantrum has gone on long enough. We're worried. Please call." The word tantrum ignited something fierce in my chest, a flash of heat confirming I'd made the right decision. 22 years old, a college graduate, yet my emotions were still dismissed as childish outbursts. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. My muscles tensed, wondering if they'd tracked me down already. I peered through the peephole to see Aunt Caroline's concerned face. "I brought muffins," she said when I opened the door, holding up a paper bag smelling of cinnamon and nutmeg. Her eyes scanned my sparse apartment, the second-hand furniture, the single suitcase still partially unpacked in the corner. "Oh, Isabel. How did you find me?" I asked, accepting the bag gratefully. "I've known you since you were born, you're methodical," she replied softly. "You'd want to stay close enough to maintain your client relationships, but far enough away to avoid accidental encounters." She settled onto my only chair. "You also used my address for your freelance business mail 2 years ago. It wasn't hard to guess you'd choose Oakwood Apartments." I sat across from her, perched on the edge of my bed. "Did they send you?" "They don't know I'm here." She hesitated, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. "But there's something you should know. Emma, she knew about the bill beforehand." The muffin suddenly turned to sawdust in my mouth. "What?" "She told me not to warn you, said you wouldn't mind, that you'd just handle it like always." For the first time since graduation, I felt the carefully constructed wall inside me begin to crack. My sister wasn't merely benefiting from our parents' favoritism, she was complicit in their scheme. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd ever expected. "I see," I managed, swallowing hard. Aunt Caroline reached for my hand. "You're not going back, are you?" "No," I replied firmly, the word carrying surprising weight, a finality devoid of regret. After Aunt Caroline left, I threw myself into establishing my new life with the same methodical focus that had gotten me through college. I carefully arranged my minimal possessions, laptop on the small desk by the window, clothes hung neatly in the closet, toiletries aligned on the bathroom shelf. Each item had purpose, nothing extraneous. That afternoon, I expanded my client list, sending professional emails from my independent domain instead of the family shared account. By evening, I'd secured 2 new projects, enough to cover next month's rent. My phone continued vibrating. I silenced it without checking. That night, I lay in bed, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling. Traffic sounds drifted through the window, so different from the suburban quiet of my parents' home. Sirens wailed distantly. Upstairs, a couple argued loudly. Yet, despite the noise, despite the strange surroundings, I felt something unexpected. Relief came in waves, a strange liberation. No one would walk into my room unannounced. No one would comment on my clothing choices or work schedule. No one would expect me to solve their problems or finance their whims. The weight of constant comparison had lifted from my shoulders. In the days that followed, allies emerged from unexpected places. Aunt Caroline became my reluctant messenger, bringing news from the family without pressuring me to return. My online clients remained blissfully unaware of my personal drama, valuing me solely for my skills. Mrs. Harper, the elderly woman in apartment 3C, brought me a houseplant on my 3rd day. "I left my husband of 40 years when I was 62, she told me, setting a potted fern on my windowsill. Some family ties need pruning for new growth to happen. Then, the owner of the coffee shop downstairs, began reserving the corner table for me every morning. "The quiet one with the computer," he called me, sliding free refills my way with a paternal wink. 1 week into my self-imposed exile, texts from my parents became desperate. "Sophia, sweetheart, we just want to check in. Why aren't you answering?" "Jonathan, Isabel, this has gone on long enough. We need to talk." Then the manipulation intensified. "Sophia, we're struggling without you. You know we've always supported you." "Jonathan, your sister is asking about you. Don't you think you're being selfish?" I read each message carefully, thumb hovering over the reply button. Instead, I left only the read receipts, my sole acknowledgement. Let them wonder why I chose silence. Let them feel, for once, what it's like to be ignored. 2 months of silence felt like power in my hands. I checked my bank account during lunch, watching the latest deposit clear without dread of calculating what portion my parents would demand. My money grew steadily, unmolested by others' needs. My phone buzzed with the 7th voicemail this week. I didn't need to listen to know its contents. They'd evolved from Sophia's concern just checking in to increasingly desperate pleas about bills and financial difficulties. Jonathan's messages carried an edge of command that once would have sent me scrambling. I deleted without listening. Peace existed in that simple action. My tiny apartment began feeling mine in ways the larger family home never had. A second-hand desk perfectly positioned beneath the window, bookshelves filled openly with computer manuals, no longer hidden behind classic novels to avoid comments about always working. The absence of Emma's clutter spilling past invisible boundaries felt calming. Silence when I wanted silence. One afternoon, Ethan nodded as I settled into my usual corner table. "Your father came by yesterday," he mentioned casually, placing my usual coffee before me. "Quite insistent about knowing your apartment number." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell him?" Ethan's weathered face creased into a gentle smile. "That we respect our customers' privacy." He didn't take it well. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "Thank you." "Family's complicated," Ethan said with the wisdom of his 60-plus years, "but it should never be combat." At my desk that evening, I opened an email from a prominent tech company needing database work. The offer surpassed any I'd previously handled. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, old habits whispering that I should consult Jonathan first. But Jonathan hadn't consulted me before handing me a bill for my existence. I accepted the contract without seeking approval, other than my own. Later, I found myself leafing through a notebook I'd kept since age 15, each page documenting imbalances: Christmas gifts, school events missed, financial support denied. A clinical record of a child trying to understand why love flowed naturally toward one daughter, yet required justification for the other. I had never shown that notebook to anyone, partly out of shame, feeling petty for cataloging these inequalities. But now I recognized it wasn't pettiness. It was self-preservation, documentation against the gaslighting accompanying every confrontation about unequal treatment. The familiar refrain echoed in my head. "You're exaggerating. We support you both equally, just differently. Emma needs more encouragement to succeed." A sudden knocking startled me. 3 sharp taps followed by a familiar voice. "Izzy, I know you're in there." Emma, my twin, my opposite, my lifelong competitor for resources I never wanted to compete for, stood at the door. Opening it, I saw she appeared smaller somehow. The confident posture she'd perfected since 16 seemed diminished. Her designer purse, a high school graduation gift, hung from her arm, but her typically polished appearance showed cracks. "They sold the car," she announced without preamble, pushing past me into the apartment. "The Mercedes. Are you happy now?" Closing the door quietly, I watched her survey my modest living space with something between pity and confusion. "Why would that make me happy?" I asked, genuinely curious about her thinking. "Because you were jealous," she said, collapsing onto my second-hand couch. "You always were." "I wasn't jealous of the car, Emma," I clarified, my voice steady. "I was hurt by what it represented, that they'd spend $55,000 on you while handing me a $30,000 bill." Her eyes flickered momentarily, perhaps the first glimmer of understanding. "They sold it at a loss," she continued bitterly. $17,000 down the drain. Dad says it's your fault they had to act so desperately." A strange calm settled over me. "Now you know how it feels." "What?" Emma asked defensively. "To have something taken from you," I replied evenly, my words landing heavily between us. Emma's expression shifted, comprehension dawning slowly and painfully. "They're really struggling, Izzy," she whispered, voice small. "The credit card bills were higher than they let on. Dad says they were counting on your savings." "My savings?" I interrupted, calm fracturing slightly. "The money I earned teaching myself coding while you attended debate tournaments they drove you to? The money I made at night after finishing the chores assigned mostly to me? That savings?" Emma examined her perfectly manicured fingernails. "They said you owed." "I know exactly what they said," I interrupted firmly. "They've been saying it my whole life without speaking the words directly. My purpose was always to make everyone else's lives easier." Another knock at my door interrupted whatever Emma might have replied. Opening it, Aunt Caroline stood holding a small box. "I salvaged what I could," she said gently, glancing past me to see Emma. "Oh, I didn't realize you had company." "Just my sister," I said quietly, taking the box. Inside were our childhood mementos, my high school academic awards, early drawings, a small robotics trophy I'd won in 9th grade, relegated to the basement while Emma's debate trophies lined the hallway. "They're purging," Caroline explained softly. "Selling things. I didn't want these to disappear." Emma rose suddenly from the couch, visibly shaken. "Things are bad, Izzy, really bad," she confessed, tears welling in her eyes. "Look, I know I've never said this before, but I'm sorry for a lot of things. They're talking about selling the house, and I thought maybe you could help. Not for them, but for me." The request hung heavily in the air, cloaked as an apology yet still asking me to sacrifice, the familiar family dynamic reasserting itself, just with different words. "No," I said firmly, the single syllable carrying the weight of countless unspoken words from my past. Emma blinked in surprise. "What?" I said no. "I won't rescue them, or you," I repeated, placing Aunt Caroline's box carefully on my desk. "I spent my entire life solving problems I didn't create. I'm done." After they left, Emma in quiet indignation, Aunt Caroline with a gentle squeeze of my hand, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not the controlled private tears perfected through childhood, but deep body-shaking sobs that felt like excavation, like the archaeology of buried pain. I cried for the child who kept meticulous notes documenting her own diminishment, for the teenager who believed if she worked harder she'd earn love freely given to her sister, and for the young woman who received a bill instead of congratulations on her graduation day. As my tears subsided, my phone rang, Aunt Caroline's name illuminating the screen. "They're selling the house," she said without preamble. "They have no choice now." The family home, the site of 1,000 small wounds and occasional joys, the physical space that contained my systematic erasure. And I managed, unsure what Aunt Caroline expected from me. "Jonathan listed it this morning, well below market value. They need a quick sale." She paused carefully. "With what you've saved in your new contract, you could buy it, Isabel. You could buy your family home." The irony landed like a physical blow, me purchasing the very house my parents never allowed me to fully belong in. Why would I want it? My voice remained steady despite the storm raging inside. Aunt Caroline hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I don't know, revenge, healing, closure, or maybe just because you can. After hanging up, I sat alone in the growing darkness of my apartment, weighing power against peace, justice against freedom. The choice before me wasn't really about real estate. It was about whether reclaiming power meant wielding it as it had been used against me or forging something entirely new from the ashes of what had been taken. In the mid-morning sunlight streaming through my single window, dust motes danced quietly. I sat cross-legged on my apartment floor, surrounded by spreadsheets and financial projections. My laptop screen displayed my savings account balance, a number steadily grown since leaving home 6 months ago. It was enough to buy the family house if I wanted to. But I didn't. My phone buzzed again, a notification from Sophia. I'd stopped thinking of her as mom. It was her third email this week, the subject line sharp with accusation. "This was your home too. Don't you care?" My automatic filter sent it directly to a folder I opened only on Sundays when emotionally prepared. I'd established similar boundaries for texts and voicemails, technology providing the barrier my parents had never permitted. Returning to my calculations, I knew the money I'd saved, properly invested, would secure my own future. Not theirs, not Emma's, but mine alone. A knock at my door interrupted my concentration. Aunt Caroline stood holding another cardboard box. "Just a few things I thought you might want," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Your science fair medals, your middle school journal, some photographs." Accepting the box, I nodded gratefully. "Thank you." She surveyed my small apartment approvingly. "You've made this place your own." "I've made myself my own," I corrected gently. "They're selling desperately below market value," Caroline continued, carefully studying my face. I stayed silent. We'd established rules. She could share information, but I wouldn't discuss my reactions or plans. "Jonathan's been spinning a story around town," she added cautiously, "claiming you abandoned the family when they needed you most." Something flickered inside my chest, not hurt but a cool anger. "And it's backfiring spectacularly," she revealed, a faint satisfaction crossing her features. "Mrs. Holloway cornered me at church on Sunday, saying she'd always noticed how differently they treated you, like how at your high school graduation party, they spent 20 minutes praising Emma's B+ in calculus but never mentioned your scholarship." I glanced away, surprised. People noticed more than I'd imagined. The Crawfords dropped Sophia from their dinner party circuit. The Hendersons suddenly become busy whenever Jonathan calls. Aunt Caroline leaned forward. "The community is choosing sides, Isabel, and they're not choosing them." "I never asked for that," I responded softly. "You didn't have to." She straightened a stack of books on my coffee table. "The truth has a way of emerging." 3 days later, Ethan waved me to my usual corner table at his cafe, his daughter Elena sliding a freshly baked scone across to me. "On the house," Elena insisted protectively, mirroring her father's warmth. Ethan sat down opposite me, his voice lowered respectfully. "Your parents caused quite a scene at the farmer's market yesterday. Jonathan blamed Sophia for allowing you to leave. She blamed him for the car purchase. It was very public and very ugly." I carefully broke the scone into precise pieces, absorbing the news quietly. "Jonathan doesn't look well," Elena added gently. "My mother says it's stress." I said nothing. Their health wasn't my responsibility anymore. Ethan placed a reassuring hand over mine. 3 new clients called asking specifically for your consulting services. The word is spreading about your work. His coffee shop had become an unofficial headquarters. Clients found me there, friends checked in, a surrogate family quietly forming around steaming mugs and whispered conversations. That evening, Mrs. Harper knocked on my door, her financial advisor in tow. "This young lady helped me secure my retirement," she announced proudly, introducing the sharp-eyed woman beside her. "She can help you make your money grow, Isabel." By the time they left, I had an investment strategy that would triple my earnings within 5 years. 6 months after graduation day, I signed the papers on a small house, 3 neighborhoods away from where I grew up. Modest, yes, but completely mine, bought with money I'd earned and saved myself. The afternoon I moved in, Emma called unexpectedly. "I need a loan," she said without introduction, her voice drained of its former confidence, the golden shine tarnished by reality. "Just until I find something steady." "And what exactly are you doing to find something steady?" I asked calmly, unpacking dishes in my new kitchen. "I have an interview tomorrow," she admitted reluctantly. "Retail, nothing like what I was supposed to have." The Mercedes was supposed to be yours too, I reminded her gently, neither cruel nor comforting. How's that working out? Silence stretched painfully between us. I start training next week, she finally whispered. Mom and Dad keep fighting about money. Dad's blood pressure is so high, his doctor called twice last week. I absorbed the information without comment. Emma continued hesitantly. Mom called Aunt Caroline crying yesterday. She said she never realized how much you'd done until they had to do everything themselves. Too little, too late, I thought, but didn't say aloud. The family's falling apart, Izzy, Emma whispered tearfully. Without you holding us together. After ending the call, I found a cream-colored envelope in my mail. Inside was a handwritten letter in Sophia's elegant script. We know we lost you, the final paragraph read. And that's a price far greater than any car or debt. I read it twice before placing it quietly in my drawer. Words cost nothing. Actions had built this wall between us. The next morning brought another envelope, this one bearing Mrs. Harper's precise handwriting. Formal legal language caught my eye. Reading it carefully, I realized she'd updated her will. I never had children who appreciated me, the accompanying note explained, but I see myself in you, Isabel. Papers detailed a future inheritance, her house, investments, and meticulously tended garden, security beyond anything I'd imagined when packing a single suitcase that day. That evening, sitting on my front porch, I watched the neighborhood settle into evening routines. Through windows, I glimpsed families gathering for dinner, ordinary moments I'd once desperately craved. But now, in the quiet of my own home, I discovered something better than what I'd lost, recognition from someone who truly saw my worth. The certified letter arrived 3 days later, sitting on my kitchen counter like a venomous snake. Sender, Greenfield and Associates, attorneys at law, made my stomach clench. When I finally opened it, disbelief quickly gave way to a cold laugh. Formal notice of claim against earnings, family investment in your education, reasonable expectation of financial contribution. The dense legal jargon stretched over 3 pages. My parents wanted a piece of my success, the business I'd built alone, the clients earned through late nights and self-taught skills. They claimed it as dividends on their supposed investment. My phone buzzed insistently. Emma again, her third call today. Against better judgment, I answered. Izzy, her voice quivered, nothing like the confident sister who once accepted luxury without a second thought. They've done something terrible. Dad hired a lawyer. I know, I replied calmly, the envelope crinkling in my hand. I received the letter. I tried to talk them out of it, she confessed, a catch in her throat suggesting tears. They're telling everyone you abandoned us, that you owe them. I closed my eyes briefly, unsurprised yet stung. And what do you think, Emma? Silence stretched painfully. Finally, she spoke quietly. I think they're desperate. The house is gone. Dad's credit is ruined. They're living in a 2-bedroom apartment off Mapleton Road. The address wasn't far from where I'd started after graduation. The symmetry might have felt satisfying if it weren't so tragic. This legal claim, Emma continued shakily, it's garbage, Izzy, pure garbage. And they know it. Aunt Caroline's living room felt like neutral territory when I visited her later, though her eyes telegraphed worry as she poured tea. Sighed, fallen autumn leaves scattered across her lawn like warning signs. Sophia's calling everyone in the family, she explained softly, settling into her armchair. Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks, and she's working the phones like a politician. I cupped my tea mug, feeling its comforting warmth. What's she saying? That you've forgotten where you came from, that family should stand by family. Caroline's lips tightened. Your cousin Michael asked if that was the same family who handed you a bill on graduation day. A small satisfaction warmed my chest. Word was indeed spreading. Yes, well. Aunt Caroline adjusted a throw pillow, avoiding my eyes. People are taking sides, Isabel. Your father's sister isn't speaking to me because I wouldn't condemn you at church. She paused gently. The annual Hawthorne family Christmas photo is scheduled for December 1st. Sophia mentioned pointedly that you'd be noticeably absent. Christmas photo, a tradition stretching back generations. My absence would speak volumes. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, I said sincerely. Don't be, Caroline assured me, reaching for my hand. Some middles are worth standing in. In the calm of my attorney Clarissa Wu's office, leather chairs smelled faintly of lemon polish. She reviewed the letter from my parents, her experienced eyes narrowing at specific passages. "This is legally indefensible," she stated definitively. No court would entertain the notion that parents are entitled to their adult child's earnings as repayment for raising them. I'd brought meticulous documentation, years of financial inequities each carefully noted, Emma's car insurance paid, mine ignored, college application fees covered for one twin but not the other. "We could countersue," Clarissa suggested thoughtfully. "Emotional distress, there's certainly ample evidence." The thought of dragging my family through court, exposing our private wounds publicly, felt heavy. "What's the alternative?" I asked carefully. Clarissa closed the portfolio gently. "Sometimes the most effective response isn't legal at all." The letter took 3 days to write. I verified each fact twice, stripping away emotional accusations, simply documenting events. When I attached a copy of the graduation bill, the $30,000 list of family expenses, the narrative needed no embellishment. I sent copies to extended family, my parents' closest friends, and the community surrounding their church. The final paragraph offered Emma assistance with career counseling, should she desire. I didn't send it for revenge, but because truth plainly stated was the only defense against revisionist history. Responses arrived quickly, like rain after drought, first a trickle, then a downpour. Aunt Caroline called, explaining that Jonathan's brother, always their strongest ally, confronted them directly. "Sophia couldn't even look him in the eye," Caroline explained. She excused herself and cried for 20 minutes. Emma texted soon after. The lawyer had withdrawn the claim without explanation, just a formal disengagement letter. At the grocery store, Mrs. Peterson from my parents' church squeezed my arm. "We had no idea, dear," she whispered, slipping me an invitation for Thanksgiving dinner before hurrying away. Power had shifted, not through revenge but by finally allowing my parents to experience the consequences of their actions. Aunt Caroline's Thanksgiving table gleamed, polished silver catching afternoon sunlight. I smoothed my forest green dress, simple yet elegant, helping Caroline place name cards around the table. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly, positioning my card prominently at the head opposite my parents. "I'm sure," I replied confidently, despite the anxiety fluttering in my chest. Guests arrived, cousins, Caroline's friends, and Emma, who froze momentarily upon seeing me before rushing forward into an awkward yet genuine embrace. "I didn't know you'd be here," she whispered, scanning my face urgently. "I should have seen it, Izzy, all those years, how they treated you." "What changed?" I asked, stepping back, studying my sister who had once accepted my invisibility without question. "They did it to me too," Emma confessed shakily. "Once you left, they expected me to fill your role." "I'm so sorry." "I didn't leave to hurt anyone," I clarified gently. "I left to save myself." The doorbell chimed, and Aunt Caroline exchanged a glance with me before disappearing briefly. Familiar voices drifted from the hallway, cadences that once defined my world. My parents stepped into the dining room, Sophia's hand fluttering to her mouth, eyes widening in shock. Jonathan halted abruptly, face pale as though seeing a ghost. Calmly, deliberately, I continued slicing the turkey. "Happy Thanksgiving," I greeted, meeting their eyes directly for the first time in over a year. "Please sit." 2 years after graduation day, I stood quietly in my home office, fingers tracing an award plaque from last month's business journal feature, "Self-Made Success Gives Back." Beside it, a letterhead announced the scholarship foundation I'd established, awarding 5 students annually who, like me, had to support themselves through college. Each received what I hadn't, acknowledgement of their resilience. My Christmas tree stood in the corner, each ornament chosen carefully, an angel from Mrs. Harper, a delicate teacup from Aunt Caroline. Last weekend, Lauren's housewarming brought genuine warmth. Friends gathered, creating new traditions. As snowflakes gathered on my porch, the doorbell rang. Peering through, I saw Sophia standing alone, face humble, uncertain. "I was nearby," she began, clearly untrue given the 30-minute drive. "Maybe we could talk?" I stepped aside. "I can offer coffee." Passing my study, her eyes lingered on the framed graduation bill prominently displayed. She flinched slightly but said nothing. "It reminds me to value myself," I explained quietly, "especially when others didn't." Later, wrapped in Aunt Caroline's quilt on my porch, my phone illuminated with messages, plans from Ethan and Elena, confirmation of a sister's weekend from Emma, a tentative therapy update from Sophia. Nothing from Jonathan, and that was fine too. I whispered softly into the winter air. Some debts can't be repaid, but some gifts like freedom you must give yourself.